Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marvelous Movie Mondays. It is Monday, April, don't make me do the math, 24th. I
Yes.
do the math because we record this not on Mondays because we always pre-record in case I say something stupid that needs to be edited out. Emphasis on I because I'm usually the one who does that. But we haven't had that roadblock in quite a while. I
Except
know
for my
last. What
Aubrey
was you were gonna
Plaza
say?
blunder.
Oh yeah. So to clear up something from months ago, um Aubrey Plaza is in the MCU. When we were talking about it on the Paul Rudd movie club, we kind of in the moment Kelsey was like, I think she should be in the MCU, and I was like, oh my god, that'd be such a good idea. Not remembering that she was announced to be in Agatha Coven of Harkness of Coven, or whatever it's called. Uh House of Harkness. I don't know.
House of
Um
Harkness. That's
that's
it.
it. I
I'm
got
like,
there. I don't know where
I'm
I
waiting
Coven
for the
from.
right name. It'll come
Yeah.
to me when you say it.
She is in it, so apologies for that. Thank you for all who reached out. I love when people correct us because they like to personally DM me rather than comment, which is really nice because now it's not like you're putting us on blast on the internet. You're instead reaching out privately, being like, "Hey, just a reminder." And it wasn't just you. I mean, like I was sitting there being like, "Yes, you should." So like I it was an oversight for me too. But I was saying more stupid stuff in terms of like stupid stuff. Like last week we talked a lot
Sure.
about like the people getting fired from Marvel and Jonathan Majors, and I was worried I was going to get into territory where I could have just like edited it out. But I think it's important to talk about that stuff because like especially with
Yeah.
everything going on and him being such a prominent face now in the MCU. And we just got news recently, even more news has come out this week that he got dropped from his agency, fired from several projects he was working on. The only thing he hasn't been fired from yet is the MCU, and I say yet because I think it's going to happen. I don't see
Yeah.
how you keep him on, especially when you've recast so many other roles. And this role, especially, has the ability to change. You can easily be like, you can easily have another actor come in as the new Kang and like wipe out the other kid, Jonathan Majors Kangs, and say, I'm taking over. Like we've seen how many different versions of Loki, and are all of them played by Tom Hiddleston? No.
Right.
So I don't think it needs to be this guy. More so than any other role. They're lucky that they have the option to recast and it makes sense with the story. Because DC's facing a similar issue with Ezra Miller. You know what I mean? So it happens, and
Right.
that's just life.
And
And it sucks. Any thoughts on the recent news? And do you think it's coming? Do you think it's an inevitable thing? I won't make you say the word inevitable because I know you don't like to, but um
no, the only reason why I don't like to is because you like I don't even think you mean to, but every time I say it, your face just twitches just like a little
every
bit.
time
Like
you
you
say what? Just kidding. Sorry.
in inedible.
Yeah, cool. So
How see, and that wasn't even right. So let's not
um
even go there.
no,
But
but do you think it's
I do
bound to
think,
happen?
yeah, I do. I do because I think that, you know,
Hmm.
Marvel is has been on this path recently where they want to, be more inclusive and have more of a diverse universe. And I think that part of this journey for them is kind of really flushing out, bad eggs
Hmm.
and things that don't really make the
Right.
universe and the projects look good. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Right. Not
And
just diversity in race and gender and all that, but also diversity in the types of people you hire and
yeah,
the talents you hire and all that. Yeah, I agree.
exactly. So I think that, they're really good at like listening to us. I don't know if like anyone's uproaring for like a recast or anything. I'm not really on Twitter anymore, and I feel like that's where it would mainly take place
I
if
feel like it's
people
not
were
like an
like,
uproar. I think it's more like a when you announce it thing. Like I think everyone's
right.
on the same page of like this can't happen, and again,
Yeah.
the reason I almost edited stuff out last week episode is because I don't really know the facts on like all the truths behind every single thing, and I didn't really want to get into the victim statement. But I don't know if you read it or not, like the actual like tweets or the text messages that the lawyer was like, hey, look, he's innocent. But I personally, reading the text messages, felt like that made him look even worse, honestly, because it was text messages between him and his girlfriend
Right.
is sending this apology that very much it rubbed me the wrong way in the sense that like I read that and felt even more for the victim after reading that. You know what I mean? So I think it's one of those things where it's spiraling, and I don't see an outcome where he bounces back from this. And I say it's a shame not because it's a shame he's getting cut because he should be reprimanded for his behavior.
Yeah.
It's a shame because Marvel put so much stock into this one person. Like literally of all the actors, this is the one person that they probably wish this hadn't happened to if it had to, you know?
Right.
But again, it's like you are in control of your career. You make the decision to touch or not touch someone or harm someone or verbally assault someone or physically assault someone. Like you make that
Yeah.
decision for yourself. And honestly, if I was a person in his position of power, like I would never risk anything to lose that. And that's where I'm more just ashamed of the whole situation and sad for the world that they don't get to see more of his talent, but at the same time, I think it's right. You know, like I don't think we should let people who are consistently keeping up with this behavior, because as we've seen, all the people from that worked with him in the past have been like speaking up about it too, previous behaviors. So like, yeah, I don't think there's uproar on Twitter about it. It's more so when are you going to say something? And I think Marvel kind of like said something along the lines of we're monitoring the situation, which they have to say that, but like
Right.
I think they're gonna wait till Loki season 2 because I think it's too late to refilm and recast and all that. So I think they might wait till Loki season 2 is over and then say,
Oh, right.
now here's our next step because that's already filmed, that's already done for. The post credits of Ant-Man Quantumania was literally a scene from Loki season 2. So
Yeah. And
I
it's tragic. It's also tragic because like for we've kind of left phase 4 behind, and phase 4 what it was, take it or leave it, and now we're entering the phase 5 and phase 6, and he's kind of been like the element so far. We just got our first movie of phase 5, so,
yeah,
there could be many other things that make this phase exciting down the line, but he's kind of been the element that we've all been super pumped about. Like, oh my
yeah,
God, him as Kang is incredible. He's like this force, especially after Quantumania. But so it's just like, really, you have to be like a piece of shit. Like,
yeah. Well,
like,
and I
you
will
were
say
gonna
though,
save the MCU from itself.
he's very talented and that's what I'm gonna miss, but I do think there are other talented actors that I think will and can and should do a just a fine job, if not better. And I think they're going to find someone good. I hope. Um,
Yeah. I'm
but
honestly looking right now. I'm like, who could take over that
my
would
prime candidate, and I don't know, I don't think he's been in anything MCU, but he's been in some DC stuff, and he was the newest Candyman, and that's Yahya Abdul Mateen the second. I would love to see him do it.
Ah.
He'd be a great pick, I think. If they're gonna still go the same like typecast route, you know, kind of bigger, more intimidating, like muscular, but also kind of like very charming. You know, like I do think he would fit the bill. Yeah, like that would be my prime choice, or get someone completely new that we've never seen before. Give him an opportunity, like Aman Vellani did, or
Mhm.
I don't know. But just had to touch on that because I know it's something we want to keep talking about on the show. Because as Marvel fans, you know, we want to hold people accountable. Because we want our art to be the best it can be, and this kind of conversation comes into account when talking about that. Speaking of best they can be, we looked at 3 films this week. Some of the best 3 films of a certain individual.
Oh,
And
yes, we did.
that's the subject of this video, and we're doing another Avengers movie club because you know when we don't really have much to talk about and we don't have a few weeks to talk about like a series like Daredevil or whatever. We figured let's dive into the films, the filmography of other MCU cast members. Usually we line it up with like a certain thing, like Paul Rudd. We lined up his movie club with Quantumania. Um, uh, Hemsworth we lined up with Thor: Love and Thunder. Ruffalo with She-Hulk. Like we've kind of like paired them up. And there was one person that when his show came around, we forgot to do. Or didn't forget, but we just didn't have the chance to do. And now
Right.
time has passed, and it doesn't look like he's going to be in any projects of the MCU, at least not, as far as we know, because his character seemingly retired. So now we're like, shoot, when are we gonna do Jeremy Renner? Because he's the last one of the 6 Avengers. And then tragically, at the end of last year, he got in this very bad snowmobile accident, and they like did this whole like special series thing on him on Disney Plus called like Renovations or something like that. And
Mhm.
now he's like kind of being more talked about in the news. So I figured, you know what, this is a good chance to do an Avengers movie club for Jeremy Renner. So we were looking at 3 films of his, 2 best 2 Oscar nominated performances and then 1 non-Oscar nominated performance. And then one of the Oscar nominated performances is from a film that won Best Picture, won Best Director, first film to win Best Director for a woman director. So very notable 3 films. Those films are 2009's The Hurt Locker, 2010's The Town, and 2017's Wind River. Um, Kelsey, before we get into it, anything about Jeremy Renner before we kind of like dive into Hurt Locker? Any thoughts on his career, and are you excited to be talking about these movies today?
This was a very interesting Avengers Movie Club. First of all, I had never seen any of them, which I
Cool.
don't know if that's happened before. So these were
And
all
I
first time watches
and
for
this is
me.
all rewatches for me, so like it's kind of a cool like different lens.
Interesting. So yes, I did do some background research on Jeremy Renner and how he got into acting. And basically, okay, so he was born January 7th, 1971. He is a Capricorn. Um, so he basically like lived his whole life not really being into the arts. He went to college. He was getting a degree for in computer science and criminology, and he just happened to take a theater elective while there, and he was like, I think this is my thing now. So he abandons computer science and
I love that.
criminology.
I love that.
In 1995, so he's like about 24 now. He lands his first role, professional role in the comedy National Lampoon's Senior Trip. And fun fact about him, I feel like I did know this in the back of my mind, but I was, it was fun again to read it on Wikipedia because that's where I do all my research.
Yeah.
He worked as a makeup artist to help make ends meet, and I've definitely heard him talk
Oh,
about that in some interviews.
I had no idea.
Um, yeah,
Cool.
which is so
Mhm.
like out of pocket. I would not have
Right.
expected that from
Yeah.
Jeremy Renner.
Right.
In 2002, he gets like his first like really big role in a Jeffrey Dahmer biopic
Mm.
as Jeffrey Dahmer. It was called Dahmer, and he was nominated for Best Male Lead at the Independent Spirit Awards.
Right.
In 2005, he lands another big role in a film called Neo Ned, where he won at the Palm Beach International Film Festival Best Actor. So he's like picking up some awards and nominations under his
Yeah.
belt. He's booking some good stuff. And then in
Mhm.
2009 was when he landed the Hurt Locker,
Right.
was an Academy Award nominee, and then immediately after, 2010 is in the town is an gets another nomination from the Academy Awards for supporting actor rather than lead
Right.
actor. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of his. That's him. That's Jeremy
Yeah,
Renner.
yeah. We picked the Hurt Locker as the first one because we usually like to go for the breakout because that really was like the mainstream breakout. I know Dahmer
Yeah.
was like his first big role, but like not many people saw it. But like Hurt Locker, I remember just when that came out because it was like in the midst of like Avatar first came out and Up and like some of these really big movies. But like The Blind Side, but like Hurt Locker was like the one where everyone was like, "But who's this guy?" Like this is like a guy we've never seen before. He's great. Um, so yeah, really cool breakout for him. But did you watch any of the new show on Disney Plus, or do you know anything about it, or no?
I didn't. I read a
Mm,
little bit about it while you were talking. And he said, okay, the description of the show is, I'll read it right from the
mm.
Goog. Jeremy Renner teams up with expert builders to acquire large decommissioned government vehicles and reimagine them as quote mind-blowing creations that serve kids in communities worldwide.
Oh, I did not realize that. I thought it was all about his accident and recovering. Maybe they
No,
talk about it,
he
but
he did a separate
special.
kind of special about the accident, but the show
It's totally unrelated.
is
Okay.
it's a take on the word renovation. like, you know,
Reservation.
when you
Oh,
no,
renovation. Yeah.
renovation, when you get your house
Yeah, yeah.
redone, but it's his last name.
Yes.
Um,
So in New York accent, it's still renovation.
yeah, essentially, yes. That's why I had a hard time for a
Yeah,
moment
yeah, 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 yeah.
differentiating the two,
Wow, okay, yeah, cool.
because I say
I
renovation.
that type of show
Um,
is not my cup of tea, but, I will check it out because I like him.
well, Anthony
Um
Mackie's on it, so
Which is
uh,
probably a good segue for the first film we're talking about because
right.
it's not only the breakout of Jeremy Renner, but it's interesting because a lot of these films are like breakouts for more than one MCU actor, which I think is
Yeah.
fun. But this one, yeah, is one of the breakouts, not the breakout, but one of the breakouts for Anthony Mackie. He had done 8 Mile, he had done $1 Million Baby, but this is another one. It's probably one of his biggest roles yet at this point in his career. Yeah, The Hurt Locker. Kelsey, tell us about The Hurt Locker.
Yes. So The Hurt Locker came out in 2008, I put, but then I
The
said
festival
earlier.
premiere, yeah, festival premiere was 2008, but it didn't get released in theaters till 2009. So
Okay,
it was competing for the 2009 Oscars.
gotcha. So it came out in 2009. It was directed by a woman, Catherine Bigelow.
Yeah.
Um, she also directs, fun fact about her, she directed Point Break, 1991 Point Break,
Mhm.
which is a funny little Marvel joke
Yeah.
because that's the nickname Tony Stark gives to Thor in the
Thor.
first Avengers. She's also known for directing Zero Dark 30 from 2012, and she also directed Anthony Mackie in another film, 2017's Detroit.
Yes.
So,
Which is so underrated. Like I like Catherine Bigelow, but I like very few of her films are like some of my all-time favorites, but Detroit is
yeah.
so good, especially with like all the police brutality stuff that's been going on recently. Like it's so good. I highly recommend that one.
And we have quite a few Marvel crossovers. This is
Yeah.
also maybe the first, what is this called? Avengers Movie Club, that we have in all three films some Marvel crossovers. So,
Mhm.
like we
A
said,
lot of them
Anthony
too, yeah.
Mackie. We also have Guy Pearce, whose character we tragically lose in like the first 10 minutes. He plays Matt Thompson. As we know, Guy Pearce is Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. And we have Evangeline Lilly making basically a cameo at the end
Right.
as Jeremy Renner's wife, Connie James, at the end of the film.
Mhm.
So let's talk about it, Jill.
Yeah, I actually didn't rewatch this for this. I rewatched it for Picture This because we Chad and I just did 2009 like a few
Mm,
months ago.
nice.
Because this one did win Best Picture, and I think it's really interesting because films like this doesn't feel like your conventional Best Picture winner. You know, it's very I don't want to say slow burn, but it's very interestingly shot to where it doesn't really have like a 3 act structure kind of narrative type thing. It's not going on any sort of like really real journey. It's just kind of like living with these characters in this time and place for a very specific amount of time, and it deals more as a character study for like human psyche and processing in the midst of war and high tense environments more so than it is about like an overarching narrative, which I think is really interesting for like an Academy Award winner, especially in a year where you have some of the biggest films ever made like Avatar and Up and Inglorious Bastards, you know, all these movies that are like classics now. And I would say this is also one of like kind of one of a classic, but like it's
Right.
also I think it helps the fact that it is a history making film for its representation for director that makes it, I think, like still canonized because this film itself is very small and doesn't feel like a Best Picture winner. But I think that's why it's kind of cool. Like it's kind of an interesting
Yeah.
take on something you would think of as like this best prestigious award. As a first time watcher though, Kels, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, Dill. This just really quick. This racked up the awards at the
Yeah,
2010 Academy Awards. They got, as you said, Best Picture. Catherine Bigelow won for Best Director. It won Best Original Screenplay, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound and Editing Mix. Sound editing and mixing.
mhm,
Um, and he also got nominated not only for Best Actor at the Academy Awards, but he also got a SAG Award nominee for this role.
yeah,
And also, fun fact about the 2010 Oscars. So Jeremy Renner did lose to Jeff Bridges for Crazy Heart.
yes,
So, which I
another
thought
MCU
was,
actor. Yeah.
which is another MCU actor.
Mhm.
So I wanted to bring that
Yeah,
up.
very cool.
As
And just one thing to chime in there also, first ever woman to win Best Director, which is why this is like a big deal. And I believe the first ever film directed by a woman to win Best Picture. So it was Catherine Bigelow, and then the next one after Catherine Bigelow was Chloe Zhao for Nomadland, and then a year after that, Jane Campion won for Power of the Dog. So we've had 3 women win Best Director, and Catherine Bigelow is the first, and she beat her ex-husband James Cameron, who directed Avatar, the very same year. So like it was kind of like this cool like I don't know, this cool
That's
girl boss
iconic.
moment. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Also, I'm so upset to learn that there have only been
yeah.
3
I know.
women directors to win ever. But oh my god, good for wow. I'm a Catherine Bigelow stan now. Um, yeah, Dill, this movie was interesting. I was watching it and I kind of went into it thinking I was like, okay, so this is going to be like another war movie, and I haven't really seen tons of war movies just because I'm not the demographic. I feel
I agree. Me,
um
me neither.
like I had this thought when I was watching it, and because like I forget where she did it, but like Brie Larson has this great speech about how we need film critics to represent all different types of people so that like films are getting reviewed and, getting critiques and things like that from the demographics they're meant for. And it's
Mhm.
like, and I was just watching this movie and I was like, I'm clearly just like not the demographic made. So like, why would anyone want to hear my review of this movie? So why do we only hear from white men to like review like the woman king? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just like had this thought in my head that I wanted to share. But
Mhm. But
as
I
far as
honestly think that's interesting, though, having a woman review this because it is a women-directed film, and it's interesting to look at
yeah,
it from that lens. Like, is it different than other war movies because a woman directed it, or is it just that she
yeah,
just did a great job directing this script, this movie, and like it does this stand out as one of the better war films you've seen? Like, I'd love to pick your brain specifically because this is kind of like seen as this big triumph for women, but the story itself has very few women in it. And like you said, Evangeline Lilly comes in at the end.
yeah,
It doesn't feel like a very like pro-feminist piece, and that's what's so interesting about it. It's not a woman's movie, but it is directed by a
yeah.
woman. You know what I mean?
That is really interesting. And that's just yeah, I that's just my gut reaction to say to that is like, well, she was clearly the best person for the job to do it, so I feel like it shouldn't come down to
Right.
whether or not you're a man or a woman or something in between to do a job. It should be the best person, and it's
Right.
obvious that she was because she won for
Yeah.
it, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And I think that tonally and just like cinematically, this movie is very different from your run of the mill war film because my history with war films is like Saving Private Ryan. I watched American Sniper because like I'm a big Bradley Cooper fan, and I think that's like really it. Like I can't really think of something else. I mean, what's that movie we watched where Robert Downey Jr. is racist?
Oh, Tropic
Um,
Thunder, but that's like
But that's like not a
that's
war, but
no, they're
like that.
filming a war movie in yeah, and then
Exactly.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, that's as close as I get to, like, watching, like, other war movies, and I think that this one right off the bat, I wrote down that it feels like it's filmed like a documentary. Like,
yes,
you're very much like it's a lot of handhelds. I feel like we were never really on a crane. Like, the cameras are never really stationary. You're very much, like, up in with the actors, like you're in the combat zones, you're in the high stakes situations, and there's a lot of zooming in and out like to get people's reactions. There's like a lot of like swift camera movements. Like it
mm,
feels like it like not an episode of The Office, but like it feels like it was shot like a documentary.
yeah,
And that just like made it feel so much more immersive, and it made like the stakes higher because
yeah.
it just felt like we were there.
Yeah, which
um
makes it all the more scarier because it's all about
right,
defusing bombs, and you're
right,
up close with the action. You're almost getting nervous that you're in the middle of this thing. Like this is one of those films that you want to be on the outside looking in. You don't want to be in the action, but they
yeah,
put you in there
yeah.
to give it more unease. Yeah.
And it feels with like other war movies, it's like there's a very clear like objective and conflict and like getting from point A to point C kind of thing, where this movie, it feels like a bunch of just different, like, okay, now we have to move on to do this thing. And I guess like the through line is our main character Jeremy Renner, who plays what's his name in this movie? Sergeant William James, who's like their
It's like a random wheel generator of white guy names. Spin it. Sergeant William James. Like,
Sergeant William James, literally, he's the bomb diffuser for this bomb squad during the Iraqi war, and I guess you'd say like the objective of this whole movie is just this guy's survival and like making sure he makes it to the end of this
yeah.
tour to then go do, this movie ends with him just starting a whole new other cycle with a different group of guys, so it doesn't feel like it consistently has one through line, and I don't
Right.
necessarily like dislike that,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it does feel so different and it moves. Like
Mhm.
it's a
Slower
2-hour
pace.
film, but it doesn't feel like you're sitting there for 2 hours, where other movies that we had to watch for this cycle maybe
Right.
did feel like you were sitting there for 2 hours. Um
Oh, okay.
so great. I
Interesting.
wrote down that it felt just like really immersive, and just like everyone, just like the entire cast did such a great job of just like feeling like you were just watching real people. Like it never felt like a performance. It never felt like, over dramatized or anything like that. Like it just felt really grounded and really real.
Yeah, and I think
And
that's a testament to Jeremy Renner's performance in this too, because
yeah,
he has a lot of emotional juggling. Because this is mostly more about the soldier's psyche than it is about the actual act of diffusion, But it's
right.
really interesting to see him kind of go through the turmoils and like have those emotional ranges without feeling overly, characterized, which I really like about his performance, and I think that's why he kind of broke down the scene in such a powerful way because he was able to kind of like funnel all that in a really interesting way.
Yeah. And I think it also helps that his character is kind of just like has the most kind of, I guess, like I guess for lack of a better word, like personality, I guess. Like he
Right.
kind of has this air about him, this like coolness, this like when I was doing research on this movie, like someone described his character as having an indifference to death. Like he kind of goes into every situation like, yeah, well, this might be it, it might not. So like,
Right.
I'm just gonna go do my job.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just like this rookie trope of like I'm going to come in and be kind of like arrogant and cocky about it, and I'm always going to do the job well because I know how to do my job,
Right.
and I'm the best for a reason kind of thing. But you do see him go through a lot of emotional turmoil, especially when it comes to the boy that he befriends.
Yeah.
And when he thinks for a minute that like this body that he's looking at, first of all, what a gross scene.
I know. I
The
know.
graphicness of this scene, oh my god, it just made me, as I mean, maybe it was because it was a war that happened so recently
Right.
and may or may not still be going on. I'm not sure what's happening in the Middle East. I'm very uneducated in that regard, but it just felt like I really like sat back and watched this movie and was like, "Oh my god, like being in war must be traumatic." And I guess, I don't want to sound like stupid. Like obviously I've always thought this, and like obviously this, it's a lot to handle physically and mentally, like being a soldier. But it just like this movie just like I feel like paints the picture almost too well, where you
Yeah.
like really empathize with these guys that have to cut open children's bodies to pull out bombs and equipment and things that they're being used for. And then you find out that the kid, that it wasn't the kid, it was a different kid. And it's like it's almost like this, like you want to have this
Yeah.
sigh of relief, but it's like
Still sad.
it does it makes you still sad for the other kid that was, used as a literal weapon of war. And then it makes you almost think like, well, when's it going to be this kid's time, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And
It's sad.
that was kind of the best stuff, I feel like,
Mhm.
in the whole movie, that for Jeremy, where he was go you kind of felt how, at the end of the day, he can have this like arrogance and cockiness about him, but he's still like a human being at his core and like still has complex emotions about life. especially when it comes to a child who, doesn't deserve to be in this setting, who
Right.
should still be, innocent and, not be in a literal combat zone. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was super interesting because, and I think the ending stuff is interesting as well, because you go from, being in a combat zone for like an hour and 45 minutes, and really only the last like few minutes of this movie is when you see him at home with his may or may not be wife, who he's gotten like who's they've got a divorce but they still live together, and like they have a
Mm.
child together. And it's kind of like this weird, you have this weird moment where it dawns on you, like, they go through all of that in combat zones, and then they just come back and do mundane life. And they just cut to them being in a grocery store. And it's like, oh, can you just like pick up cereal for us? And it's like, yesterday I was
Yeah.
cutting
Right.
out bombs out of
Right. Right.
kids,
Right. Right.
and now I'm
Yeah.
picking out cereal. And it's,
Yeah.
you just have this like, it's just, like I said, I feel like it just paints the picture of like what it means to be in a war just like too well.
Yeah, I almost wish they had done a little bit more with the ending, like maybe just had more of the ending, because
Sure.
for me, war films, I'm much more interested in the coming home experience than I am about the actual in war experience. But that's just
Sure.
like you and I both said, we're not war movie people. Like I
Right.
much prefer. There's a movie from the 30s or the 40s called Best Years of Our Lives. It won Best Picture, and it's all about it. It starts, the first scene is them getting off the plane in America after the war. You don't see
Mm.
any of the war. It's all about them coming home, and it's 3 hours
Mm.
long. It's these three guys' journeys home. One of them loses his hands in war, so it's about how he's trying to like navigate stuff with his family now, having these like hooks on his hands. There's another guy who became an alcoholic at the war, and then there's another guy who
Mm.
actually kind of misses the war and kind of wants to
Mm.
go back, and he kind of like
Yeah.
has these dreams and stuff. And I think that movie's so amazing because like it's all about I like to say the important stuff, because like I think that is the important stuff. It's how we treat our soldiers and how we like kind of like, if you are a soldier, like how you readjust to normal life, and how hard it can be, and the empathy, like you said, like it's very big on empathy. And I think that's some of the strongest stuff in this film, and I wish there was a little bit more of it. But like I'm just so fascinated by that kind of story than I
Yeah.
am about the bomb diffusion and all that stuff. But it's still well crafted. Like I think if any other director had this film, it may not be as good. I think she just understands how to build tension really, really well, to
Mhm.
where those
Mhm.
sequences in the war are still very tense, very emotional, without many words either. I don't think this is the best screenplay necessarily. I don't know if you mentioned if it won or not. I forget,
Oh, it
but
did win for original
yeah, like I
screenplay.
don't think the screenplay is that great. It's just like I think the direction of it is so strong that it feels great. You know what I mean? Like I don't think this is
Yeah.
necessarily the most interesting story on paper, but I think she makes it interesting by the use of, like you said, like the documentary style, all that stuff. So I do like this film a lot. I think it's something that grows every time I watch it, but then I'm never really in an urge to rewatch it because
Yeah.
it's just not my
It's
type of movie. But like
it's
it's still
it's also a
solid.
heavy watch. It's
Yeah, I
heavy,
mean,
you
all
know?
three of these are kind of. I mean, one of them's a little lighter, but all three of these movies we're talking about today are heavy. There's a lot of
Yeah.
heavy subject matter for
You know,
sure.
Jill, I think the moments in the film that kind of got it the original screenplay win was where it was just like this perfect like kind of an encapsulation of life, because they would, be having these high intense combat um scenes where he would be defusing a bomb, and then he has all the people like guarding, like watching around on lookout, and then it would like cut to like a scene of like him and Anthony Mackie in the Humvee, and Anthony Mackie's just has this like beautiful moment where he's like talking about how he like wish he had a son, and was like,
Mm,
oh, I like wish I had a son. Like, I like, who's gonna miss me if like these are, any day here could be my last day, and I don't have anyone back at home who's really gonna miss me. Like, obviously my
true. Yeah.
parents will, but whatever. And they just like have these like really real, like deep cut conversations in like these pockets of tension. So you never really get a break when you watch this movie. It's like you're
Right.
stressed out about the bomb, or you're listening to them like really divulge and unload on their trauma and everything that's going on. And what was interesting and was really frustrating at the end for me was when he's trying to talk to Evangeline Lilly. He's trying to talk to
Mhm.
his wife about like
The
things that
Wasp.
that yeah. Um like just like things that he went through there. He's like trying to tell her a story about, one incident that happened, like, oh, and then we had to do this and it was crazy because then this happened. And she's just like, can you cut these carrots for me? Like, I don't really want to hear about this. Which is like in that moment you really feel for both of them because
Mm,
it's like at on his end, like he needs to talk through some of these things with someone, and like he needs to kind of unpack everything that happened to him. But at the same time, it's like if I was his wife, I wouldn't really want to hear about it either.
right.
So it's like,
Yeah.
and they just have this moment. He has this moment, and I think this is, I'll say, spoiler alert, I think that this was the best work out of the three movies that we watched for sure. And I totally understand why he got nominated for
Yeah.
Best Actor because you can just see it in his face in this moment. Like,
Yeah.
oh my
Performance
God. Like,
wise, yeah, I think this is my favorite of the three performances. Not my favorite of
yes.
three movies, but favorite of the three performances for sure.
I think this is so that's so interesting because this is definitely my favorite movie and my favorite
Cool.
performance.
Cool, cool,
So
cool.
whichever one it is your favorite, you're gonna have to sell me.
Oh, okay.
Did you give this one a score, Dill?
Yeah, I give it a 7 out of 10 because like it's not my type of movie, but it's like a really done version of this type of movie. To
Oh,
where like I,
interesting.
I think it's like slightly above average for me. Like I think it's a really solid movie. I think directorially it's like close to like a 10, but like
Sure.
I think the direction does emphasis just bring up what is ultimately like just another war film that I'm just not a war film guy, but
Yeah.
I do like it a lot.
I
And just seeing what it beat for like original screenplay, like it beat Inglorious Bastards, and I think that's one of the best scripts ever. For
Okay.
for direction, it beat you know Quentin Tarantino, James Cameron. I can't be mad at Catherine Bigelow winning director. That's great. But then like
Yeah.
best actor, yeah, like Jeremy Renner was great. Like George Clooney and Up in the Air, like it was a good year for movies. So like that's another thing too.
Yeah.
Is like I'm also comparing it to so many other movies, but yeah,
Okay, so fun fact about me, I made my letterbox account, which I didn't realize that it was letterboxed
yeah,
past tense. With a D at the end.
yeah,
But anyway, so I'm trying to curate a list right now. You're gonna think
cool.
I'm crazy of every
Oh,
movie I've ever watched in my entire life.
okay.
And so I'm like going through them all, and I'm like listing all the movies I've ever watched, and I'm like, 2009, what a year for movies. So many movies came out. I feel like 2009 was like the golden age of like cinema. I don't even know.
It
It
was a good
definitely
year. I
wasn't,
mean,
but
and even
it
for
was a packed year.
non Oscars year, it's sorry, tripping with my words, but it's the same year as Twilight, same year. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's a new movie.
Twilight was
Twilight was 2008,
2008.
but
Yeah.
it's in the midst of the Twilight stuff. It's the same year as like I said, Up, Avatar, Blindside. What else was that year though that wasn't nominated for Best Picture? Now I'm blanking. Coraline was that year, I believe, which is great.
Here,
Um,
I'll go to my
God,
letterbox right
I think
now.
Princess and the Frog might have been that year. Now I had all these movies on the tip of my tongue, and they're all this. Oh, Harry Potter and the Half Blood Prince was that year.
Yeah.
Uh, like I could keep going, but I don't remember all of them. Invictus, uh, Star Trek '09 was that year. A good year,
Race
good
to
year.
Witch Mountain.
Oh yeah, sure.
That was just the
Um,
first one that came up on my list.
uh, we should move on though, because we have two other movies to talk about. But yeah, I gave this a 7 out
Oh,
of 10. But that's not like a negative. Like it's the lowest of the three scores that I gave today. But like it's still like a solid like a 7 for me is still really good
I
because
also
that's
just
like
wanted
three
to
and a half stars on
yeah.
Letterbox if we're talking Letterbox terms.
Well, that's interesting that it's not your favorite, but you ranked it lower than I did. I actually gave it a 6.5 out of 10. So
Oh, okay.
half a
All
point
right. Well,
lower.
there you go.
But anyway, I just wanted to mention this real quick. I love the juxtaposition of him being someone who diffused bombs and had to work so closely with like wires and all this technical stuff, and then he would be seen smoking the cigarette in the car,
Right.
doing something reckless.
Right.
So he just loved to live his life on the edge, Sergeant William James. Um, but let's move on to our next
Mm,
movie chronologically, The Town,
yes.
2010, directed by Ben Affleck. Um,
Who has another movie in theaters right now, Air, which is awesome.
yes,
Yeah.
and he also directed Argo,
Which
which
is
I know
also
nothing about.
awesome. Oh my
Uh,
god, Kels. Oh, you gotta watch Argo. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
it's so good.
Okay. I'll be honest, I always confuse Argo with Fargo. And I feel like that You shouldn't
They're
blame
very
me.
different, very different.
I bet they're
But
very
I agree.
different.
Yes, Fargo you would also really love because it's
Fargo
another
is with
girl boss
Frances
movie. Yes,
McDormand,
yes,
right? Yeah.
yeah. She's a cop investigating something in Fargo, which is a very cold area. Argo is about the Iranian hostage crisis under whose presidency was it? Jimmy Carter's presidency, where this guy, this FBI guy or CIA guy, literally made a fake movie crew. Basically, had to fund an actual movie, even though it would never get made, to make a fake crew to go location scouting in Iran to try to get the hostages out of Iran and
Wow, that
fly them
sounds
back to
crazy.
America. It is crazy, and it won
So
Best
it's
Picture,
another war
and
movie. It
not
won Best
it's
Picture?
yes, but it actually won a few years after Hurt Locker won 2012. It's not really a war movie. It's more of the Iranian people take some of the Canadian embassy members hostage, or no, sorry, American embassy members hostage. The Canadian embassy kind of like takes some of the hostages and like hides them in his house, and like they basically the American government has to smuggle them out. It's more of like a heist film, but with people. Like you're
Mm.
smuggling people out of
Mm.
Iran, and as we've seen with this film, also Ben Affleck heist films are like his thing. Even though Air is not about heist at all, it's about a shoe. But
Wasn't Jimmy Carter the president like a really long time ago?
in the 70s, so yeah, it took
Okay.
place in the 70s.
Okay.
So like
Gotcha.
after Nixon, before I want to say Reagan. If
He
I'm
was the
getting
one
those
that
right.
was like, just say no, or
I
that
don't
was his
remember.
wife.
I don't
Anyway,
remember.
we
But
we
yes,
weren't alive.
Argo's great. Argo's great, and we'll watch it sometime because I really want to watch it. I'm gonna see now if there's any MCU actors that we can like pigeon that film for. Not
um,
yet. Once we get Ben Affleck, Bryan Cranston, Alan Arkin, or John Goodman in the MCU, we will try.
I
But right
please.
now
Okay.
there's no one. But
So you
we'll
know
watch it
how
on our own time.
I realized, Dill, that I'm accumulating a list of just white men that I hate,
Oh no.
and I think Ben Affleck is one of them.
Oh no, Kels.
Okay, because you know how so I hate Bill Murray. We know I hate Bill Murray.
Right, but Bill
I
Murray's done some problematic shit. But okay,
right.
keep going.
Um, I don't like Michael Keaton.
Oh,
He
yeah,
scares me.
hurting my feelings. It's okay, keep going.
Um, don't care. There was someone else that you know who I don't like? Clint Eastwood. I don't like Clint Eastwood.
I mean, I'm not a Western guy, so I could take or leave Clint Eastwood.
Because I was surprised to learn when I was like what other war movies have I watched? I mentioned American Sniper. I didn't realize that he directed that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of
Anyway,
that movie, but yeah.
And I think I don't know what it was about this movie, but I was like, I don't think I like Ben Affleck. I don't
As a
think
director, as a person, as a face, like do you not like
as
him?
I don't know him, but I think I don't like his work, and I don't like that he's famous because I find him very mediocre. And I feel like you
All
are
right.
only famous because like you're a white man.
Okay, yeah, we can dissect this a little bit. Have you seen Good Will Hunting? Yes, you have. We watched that, right?
Yeah, we did.
You like Good Will Hunting?
I thought Good Will Hunting was good
Because he wrote that
yes, he wrote
with
it.
Matt
Yeah,
Damon.
right.
Yeah, okay, and he was
So
starting it, but he kind of played like the asshole friend. Like, how about them
yeah,
apples? Okay.
maybe he should just always do things with Matt Damon because I think that's when his best stuff comes about.
All right,
We'll
so
see.
I'm taking it you don't like this film because I
I
absolutely love it and I can't wait to talk about it.
okay. We'll get to the film in a second, but also really quick about
Okay.
Ben Affleck. You know what I don't like about Ben Affleck is that him and Matt Damon made this movie. There's this movie about Michael Jordan, as you mentioned, Air, and it's by two white guys.
It's
And
not
that,
about Michael Jordan though. It's about Nike.
but it's about his sneaker.
I had the same idea going in, and I read some interviews about it, and they said that they wanted this movie. When they got the rights for Michael Jordan, Michael said, I just don't want anyone to play me because he says, I don't want the story to be who's playing Michael Jordan and is he doing an accurate Michael Jordan?
Well,
He said he'd rather make it about the shoe. So that's why it's all about
someone
them.
does play Michael Jordan.
That you see back of his headshots, but he doesn't speak. And he's not in it. It's more about his parents. It's all about Viola Davis. She's the main character. It's Michael Jordan's mother talking with these Nike guys trying to get the shoe right. The Nike guys trying to get the shoe right. So it's like Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Jason Bateman, and then it's Viola Davis. So like she's the female lead of it.
I also don't think he deserves Jennifer Lopez. But let's talk about the
Okay.
town. So
I
other
did have
accolades.
one last thing. I did have
Okay,
that same
okay,
criticism going in. I was
okay.
like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's about these white guys and it's about this black shoe, but they do a good job in that movie justifying why it is this specific story being told, and it is. I liked it for that reason, but I can see that criticism for sure. But it was kind of made with Michael Jordan's blessing, with his guidance. So like I also am kind of like, if that's what Michael Jordan wanted, like I'm not going to hold the film against it being more from the perspective of the Nike guys and Michael Jordan's mom. If Michael Jordan specifically said he didn't want it to be about him, he wanted it to be about the shoe and his mother and his family and all that. So I don't know, but I see the
All right.
criticism. I'm not trying to sell you. It's a good movie, but
No.
it's, you know.
Listen. If Michael Jordan approves, then I guess there's no choice but to accept.
No, that's
Um,
not true. But
other other accolades that Jeremy Renner received
okay.
for his performance in The Town was, we know, like we said, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. He also got a Best Supporting Golden Globe nomination, and he also got a Screen Actors Guild Award for
He won. Or no, he
yes.
yeah.
Uh, I have
Actually,
to
maybe
fact
not, because
check that.
I think Christian Bale won all the awards that year for The Fighter,
Yeah,
as he should have. It's a
well,
great
he
performance.
got the nominee.
Right.
But yes, like you said, he lost to Christian Bale for The Fighter at the Oscars. And who is also a Marvel actor, which is
Yes.
fun. And then
You know who else he was
also
up against too, right?
Mark Ruffalo
For a movie we watched.
For
Yeah.
the kids are all right.
Yeah.
Right. So here is my summary of The Town. I didn't do my summary for The Hurt Locker. I apologize at this time. Doug McRae tries to escape his lifestyle of crime when he falls in love with one of the bank tellers he robbed.
Mhm.
Um, do what do you want me to go first,
I
or
will
do
start.
you?
Because
Yeah,
I want to start with the defense of Ben Affleck. And the reason I think he works in movies like this specifically, and in general, he is never going to be your man in shining armor hero, like save the day, hot shot. Like you put him in a suit, it doesn't look right. He is your scrappy
isn't
guy
he
that you
Batman?
see. Yes, but he plays
And he's
Batman like he's kind of washed up. And I think
oh,
that's
okay.
his thing, is he has to be playing this kind of the guy you see every morning when you go to Dunkin' Donuts, who gets his black coffee, looks miserable, goes outside, smokes a cigarette, goes home and like hates his life, doesn't shower for a few days. I think that's when Ben Affleck's at his best. And I think
Okay,
he plays that type of role really well. Just the kind of like, not like loser, but like you're very Joe Schmo kind of guy
sure.
in these more extravagant circumstances, because in this sense he's like the head of this like crew that robs banks, but on the outside he's just this regular guy. In Argo,
Mhm.
he's this CIA agent who's like trying to like make this film crew so he can smuggle these hostages out, becomes this film director, but he's still like just a regular guy. In uh Batman, even he's Batman, but really he's just this kind of like old jaded Bruce Wayne. And I think it works for films because you have someone who's just kind of your everyman in those roles, because it makes for an interesting plot device. In this sense, I think the reason why it works so well is because like we see a lot of this romance, because Ben Affleck is the guy at the laundromat. He's the guy who's just kind of, having a nice conversation at the laundromat. He's not the stereotypical like bank robber, give me your money, put your hands up type of guy. And that's why it works so well, is because he's much better at being the, guy at the laundromat, and that's what makes it
Mhm.
so interesting, is you've got this guy, and that's why she's so able to like connect with him so soon. He's not Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner is the total opposite, where he is, even when he's not in his bank robber mask, you can tell he's a tough guy who's done some shit. He's got the
Yeah.
tattoo on his neck. Ben Affleck just seems like he could be just your regular old dad who goes to Dunkin' Donuts. And I think that's what creates such an interesting dynamic here, especially with Rebecca Hall's character. And I love that like twist when like they talk and you realize where it's going and it's gonna be a romance. You're like, holy shit, but he's the guy. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And the first time I watched this, I was just mind blown by that. And then just see how it escalates. And I just think this is one of the best casts ever assembled too. Everyone's really like digging into the Boston of it all. I mean, all the accents, and Ben
Yeah.
Affleck is a Boston guy. He loves to make movies about Boston. I mean, Good Will Hunting,
Yeah.
Air, I don't think Air takes place in Boston, but he's definitely from Boston, like the character. But he really loves Boston. His brother is the same way. I love John Hamm in this. I love him as the FBI agent. He plays that type of role so well where like you kind of hate him, but you know he's essentially the good guy, even though you're not looking at it from his perspective because he's doing the right
Yeah.
thing. Kind of like in Top Gun Maverick too. He's the one who's always like, "You're breaking the rules, Tom Cruise," and you as the audience has to be like, "But it's Tom Cruise." But you're also like, "No, but John Hamm does make a lot of sense." And then I love Rebecca Hall in this too, having to play that, especially once she knows everything. How does she manages it? I think Blake Lively has some awesome moments in this thing. Jeremy Renner, we haven't even talked about, but I think he brings a lot of charisma. He's so different than everything else we've seen him in. I just love this. I think it's so fun. I think the heists themselves are so interesting in how they're constructed, shot, presented, staged. The masks, the nun masks are so iconic. Like, I think
Mm,
this is just like top to bottom, just a really such a solid heist movie that gets like the grime of the city because it's called The Town. It's about the grime of Charleston. Like it has to have a sense of grime to where I think not liking Ben Affleck or finding him a little grimy works really well for this because you want to kind of be like, like you little slime ball, like I hate you, but at the same time you're like, but I oddly want you to succeed. It's this weird moral thing that I think Ben Affleck, that's the power of him as like this regular Joe Schmo type to deliver. And that's why I like this film. But I'll let you talk because I know you have thoughts. But that's like why I really am drawn to this film, why I like it so much. And I just love a good heist film, and this is that. And there's multiple heists in this that are really good. I really dig it. I do.
I'm glad you do, Dill. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it wasn't for me.
Yeah, that's
Because
fair.
I feel like it was honestly all the violence that kind of really turned me off to it. That was one of the first notes that I made. I
Right.
was like, this is very violent, and
Yeah.
that's not my super cup of tea when I watch movies. Um I'm not a violence gal.
Mm,
Like you said, we do have a Marvel crossover in this movie with Rebecca Hall, who plays
right.
Maya Hansen in Iron Man 3. Um Forgot to mention that right at the beginning of this conversation. But I don't know. I think okay, I will say like um I think John Hamm was one of my favorite characters in this
He's just the
movie.
best. He's the best in everything he does.
Cuz
Like he's so good in everything.
he's
Like he's the best.
he's just like I'm accumulating a list of white guys I hate, but I also am accumulating a list of white guys that I like. And I think John Hamm is on that list
Okay.
because I feel like he never turns in a bad performance for me. He's always really really solid. So I think I was drawn to his performance a lot. Honestly, I was surprised that Jeremy got a supporting actor any accolades for it because I feel like we didn't see him a lot. Not that he did a bad job,
Well, he's
but I
supporting. He's not a lead.
right. Yeah, but I don't know.
I think it's
I
because when he is on screen, it's such like it's a presence, and it's
yeah, it's
so
really
against type.
effective.
It's so
Yeah.
opposite of what we've seen him in everything else. And I know this is
Right.
only his second nomination, but like and second movie in a row, right after the Hurt Locker. But like again, it's like a different energy. It's this like kind of badass but bad boy, but also like even he has moments of charm too. And yeah, and those final moments are actually like really sad. Even
Yeah.
though you're like, fuck him, he should get shot in the face, but you're also like, oh, like that
Oh
sucks.
my god, him getting in the bullets like stuck in his jaw.
Yeah.
That was
Oh, it's a
really
dark movie. It's a grimy
yeah.
movie. Like it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really dark. What was I going to say? Well, I'll say this other thought. Something left this station.
You were on
My
the
brain didn't get on
wavelength
it.
of Jeremy Renner. Shocked he was nominated for it. You like John Hamm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. I think I had.
Anything
Oh,
about? Yeah.
the only thing that I knew about going into this movie was there's a sound on TikTok that's one of the scenes from this movie.
Oh yeah.
Nobody else is on this side of TikTok anyway. It's
What
like
is the sound?
the scene of them when he's like, all right, I'm gonna need your help with something. You can't ask me any questions and people are gonna get hurt. And then like Jeremy Renner's character just goes, whose car are we gonna take? And it was like, I don't know, like people were saying like, oh, me and my best friend, and like those were the TikToks. But so when I watched that scene, I was like, oh my god, I've heard that on TikTok. Um, but what I will say, maybe oh, so you I another thing that I didn't love about this movie is that I thought the accents were really distracting because it felt like people especially like I know Ben Affleck is from Boston, so he's just,
So his is
over
natural. Yeah.
his is natural. He's just um you know uh, emphasizing it for the role. But I know that it was something Jeremy Renner was working at and doing for the character, so I was a little distracted because I feel
Yeah.
like, and I'm thinking about other movies that have like really hard accents, like I immediately thought of My Cousin Vinny, but it's like, but their hardcore, Jersey accents in that movie is like for comedic effect, like it plays into the comedy of that movie. And I feel like when you have an accent heavy film and it's not for comedy, it can get kind of distracting for me. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Like hearing people talk in
Get the
Boston
car on the
accents
money.
yeah. He was like, "Don't you want to be smart about this?" And I'm like, "Is that what they really talk? Is that what they
Yeah.
actually really
But
sound
that's
like at Boston in
and
Boston?"
honestly, yeah, it is. And I think that's the thing too, is it's just like it's a very interesting culture piece too, because it's a very
Yeah.
different culture. In the very first
Yeah.
shot, they say like Charlestown, there's more, what did they say, like more robberies than any other city ever or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a totally different environment than anywhere you've ever been. Even Boston, like it's a different part of Boston. Like it's totally different. So
Right. What I will say though, Dill, at the end of this movie, did find myself rooting for Ben Affleck's character. I didn't want him to get caught by John Hamm because
right, it's weird.
there's a
Yeah.
moment on the phone where like I don't know if like he's just too smart to like, obviously he must have thought that like obviously, the cops are with Rebecca Hall and that if he actually showed up and like saw her, he would immediately get arrested, or if they had
Mm.
some sort of moment on the phone where she's kind of trying to signal to him like, even though she's mad at him for lying to her, like she doesn't want to see him go to jail. Um and so they have this like phone call conversation on the phone where she's like kind of trying to get him to come see her, but at the end of the day, he's probably not going to do that because he doesn't want to get caught. And he just and I was like, damn, I really hope he gets away with this. Like because I think I wanted him to like go get out of this town and do better at the end of the day, like go
Mm.
go to Florida, or however they say
Florida.
it in Boston.
We're
Florida,
going to
see you in
Florida.
Florida, kid.
Go to Florida.
And then go make something of yourself and have a better life. A redemption arc. Um, but yeah, there's a moment where they're discussing him and Jeremy are discussing, before they do like their big heist at the end of the movie. He's like, listen, like I'm not going back to prison, so if like we're having court in the street, he says, which I think was like, this is going to end in like basically a shootout if we don't get away with this, which is exactly what happens. And like you kind of like you have this moment where he's just like, well, I'm not going to prison, so I guess this is just how I'm going to go out right now.
Mm.
And that's exactly what happens. And yeah, it's really dark and gritty and definitely not something I needed.
That's fine. It's fine. And I think that's what's so fun about these movie clubs is like there's movies that you're way higher on than I am. Like I wasn't the biggest fan
Yeah.
of Clueless. You loved it. Like, but on the other
Yeah.
way around, I like The Town. You don't. And that's that's just personal preference. Like this type of movie is like my favorite. Like the heist, grimy crime movies. Like
Yeah.
I have thrillers. Like I love that shit.
Yeah.
And underrated. We talked about, you made your list. John Hamm, always good. You know who's always good and always underappreciated, I feel, for some reason. I don't know why. Blake Lively. She is so good in everything
Mm.
she does. And that scene at the
Yeah.
bar where she's talking to John Hamm is so good.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she gives some of my favorite performances in movies, and I feel like she gets underrated a lot. Like A Simple Favor, one of the greatest performances of the last decade. Sorry.
Yeah.
It is.
No, yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, she was definitely like surprising. It was definitely very different from anything I've seen Blake Lively do. So I was like, this is great. Like, like this is a really refreshing. I feel like she must have been like really excited to play this kind of role, this like mother who's like, having these drug problems and trying to balance like being a single mom, and it was Ben Affleck's kid.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
That's what I got from it anyways, that he was kind of the baby daddy. But
Mhm.
uh but yeah, I saw when I IMDb the movies like as I watch them, and I like see that she's in it, but she doesn't show up until like a little bit into it. And when I saw her, I was like, oh shit, Blake Lively is in this. And then I kind of finally saw her, and I was like, damn, like she really makes her presence known in this
Right.
movie. And I think her best stuff is when she has the scenes with John Hamm, because I feel like he just makes everyone around him better. And I loved the moment where he was like, I'm gonna be the one that like fucking kills you or something. Just like the threat that he gives
Yeah.
to Ben Affleck during that one scene. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not your cup of tea, but
yeah.
I love it. So I gave it a 9 out of 10. Like I really think this is
Okay.
like stop laughing, stop judging me.
No, I'm not judging you. I'm not
No,
judging you. It's just I'm only laughing because it's vastly different from the score I gave
which is
it.
fine. Like again, different perspectives. 9 out of 10 for me is 4.5 stars in Letterboxd. Like it's a lot. And I remember the first time I saw this, I had that rating, and I was like, "Am I gonna like it as much?" And I watched it again. I was like, "I like it as much." I really do. What did you give this one?
I gave this one a 3 out of 10.
Okay. That's fine.
Sorry.
Hey, that happens. Not everyone's cup of tea. Let's talk about the last film now for Jeremy Renner and see if
Yes.
this one is fares a little more positively or not. Let's talk about Wind
Okay.
River, Kelsey.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Wind River came out in 2017. It's directed by Taylor Sheridan. And I'm conditioned as a Taylor Swift fan to just see the name Taylor and immediately associate it with a woman. So I was like, oh my God,
Mm,
another female director. And I was like, oh
nope,
no,
no.
that's a man. Um, so he's also big on he's directed some episodes of Yellowstone that
Mm, yeah,
that's what's that
Kevin
one on?
Costner. It's on.
Peacock?
No, it's on Paramount. It's on the Paramount Network on TV, and then the episodes are now streaming on Peacock, I believe. Yeah,
Oh,
I think you're
okay,
right.
because that's really big these days. A lot of people
Yeah,
like that show, but
yeah.
he also
Yeah. Go ahead.
directs another show. I think it's on Paramount Plus, Mayor of Kingston,
That was on
which
HBO.
is
Yeah, with
which
Kate Winslet.
stars
Mhm.
no, that you're thinking Mayor of Easttown. This is
Oh,
Mayor of
Mayor of
Kingston.
Kingstown.
Yeah.
Kingston. Yeah. You're
So
right. Yeah.
this stars
My
Jeremy
bad.
Renner. So clearly they
Yeah.
they have a good relationship
Yeah.
together, him and
Yeah. His
this director.
yeah
Um
his big breakout in terms of film was this movie. This was his directorial debut, I believe, in film. But his he had written on stuff like the movie Sicario with Emily Blunt. He wrote that. He wrote a movie called Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and Jeff Bridges. So he was a big writer, and this
mhm.
was like his directorial debut.
Yeah.
And he's all in the Western genre. Like it's all
Right.
his films are Westerns, and this is
I
another Western. And I'm famously not a Western person, so I'm interested to see how we both think about this because I don't know if you're a Western person or not. But um, oh, do you have a synopsis or anything?
I do. When a local woman is found frozen to death, a veteran hunter, Jeremy Renner, has to team up with an FBI agent to find out what happened to her.
Yeah, and
And
Marvel
as
crossover. Yep,
Elizabeth Olsen stars as
yep.
Jane something.
Banner, Jane Banner, not to be
Jane
confused with Bruce Banner.
Banner.
And we also have some Daredevil crossover now with John Bernthal,
Oh, yes.
Punisher
Yes.
himself. Yes, John
You're
Bernthal.
you're
And we have
right.
some Twilight crossover with Gil Birmingham and
Yes.
Graham Greene, Jacob Black's parent and grandparent, I think. Right? Is Graham Greene his grandfather? I can't remember. Um,
Yeah, I think that sounds right to
yeah,
me.
but yeah, a lot of great actors in this thing. John Bernthal only in one scene, but damn, the one scene he's in, he's great in. I love John Bernthal. Like it's no mistake, we loved him as Frank Castle.
Yeah.
And I know this is about Jeremy Renner, but I just want to say, like, he's doing the Punisher again, where it's like you think he's bad, but then you realize he's doing stuff for good, and he's much more innocent here than he is in the Punisher. He doesn't really kill anyone in this one, but and
Right.
he opens the door, you're like, ah shit, this is the rapist. I fucking hate him, and then you realize it's not. He's just this caring
Mhm.
guy, and you're like, oh man, this movie's a trip.
Ah, yeah, he's like the boyfriend.
Mhm.
He
Yeah.
looked completely different. So I was like, I didn't even recognize him when I first
Oh
saw him.
wow. Okay. Yeah. That's Frank Castle. Um, So what were your thoughts on this one, Kelsey? Because this is a first watch for you. This is not a first watch for me. And as I alluded to with Hurt Locker, I do like this one a lot.
Um,
What do you think? What do you think of Wind River? Are you a Western person? Did
um,
you what did you know about this going in, or did you?
I didn't know anything about this. I had
Okay,
seen I don't really think I'd seen anything. Maybe I feel like I maybe watched the trailer one day because I think I went down a rabbit hole of like other things Elizabeth Olsen has been in, and I think that like I stumbled across this, but I had no idea that it was going to be um like a thriller almost, or like
yeah, crime thriller.
a murder mystery.
Yeah, it's very Silence of the
Um
Lambs in a way, like,
yeah.
person is either
Yeah.
reported dead or missing, and then, the cop trying to team up, and it's also kind of at the
Yes.
same time a feminist story because it's like a girl in a man's world, all this thing.
It is so funny that you say that because there were moments in this movie where I was watching Elizabeth Olsen. I was like, she's giving
Jodie Foster,
Agent,
Clarice.
yeah,
Yeah.
Agent Clary Sterling. Um um yeah, Dill, the first thing that I wrote down after watching this movie was this movie is sad, or I wrote this in present tense, so I had to have been viewing it as I wrote this note. This movie is sad and gross and hard to watch, and I don't like it. Um, because it's yeah, there's so many moments that I are burned in my brain forever,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's just like so tragic where it was kind of like a thing where almost the entire town was kind of in on it and trying to cover up something
Yeah.
horrible that happened,
Mhm.
and you're just you know and yeah, and you kind of like, I don't know, like, you kind of like forget that Jeremy Renner was even kind of there, because his best moment is right at the end of the movie when
Yeah,
they
it's when he
catch the guy.
finally yeah, and
and
I love that,
and
the whole, "You're gonna die the way she did." Or if
yeah,
you a miracle, if you thought she could make it 6 miles on foot, then go ahead,
yeah,
barefoot,
yeah.
and you
That's
obviously
like
she can't.
that's his best stuff, and like,
Mm,
you know, but you know that he's kind of has this relationship with his ex-wife that he has kids with, and he's kind of just this almost like outcast guy who
mm,
just kind of like wants to help. He doesn't really
mhm,
have an official title or anything, but he's just kind of there to be helpful. So at his
yeah.
core, he's a good
Also,
guy, but I
he was in an interracial marriage, which is a big thing too, because you see in like
right.
this in this community, it's not looked down upon, but there is very clearly kind of a division between the indigenous people and the white people. So you have Jeremy
Mhm.
Renner, who was a parent of a mixed race kids, and but then you find out through another, and this is one of my favorite moments of his, is the monologue where he talks about how his daughter died, and you get the
In the
story of,
hospital.
no, I think she
Oh
died the same way, right? Yeah, his
no,
daughter is
when
Emily.
yeah, because this when he's talking to
Elizabeth
Elizabeth
Olsen.
Olsen's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
character when she's in the hospital. Yeah, yeah,
When
yeah.
she yeah, yeah, yeah. But
That's what
yeah,
I meant.
he's yeah, yeah.
Um,
He's talking
no,
about
yeah,
how his daughter died and stuff like that. Like, you realize that, like, that's even made him more of an outcast because now him and his wife split up. So now he's not part of any sort of family, indigenous family, but he still wants to be involved because his kid is still, he wants to be there for his son. Uh, but then, he's got to relive the trauma of like his
yeah,
daughter being basically raped and killed as well, and then having to investigate this now next murder where he knows exactly what it is because he relived it, and then the trauma. His son's asking, "Did she die the same way as Emily?" And it's like, oh, like that stuff really got to me with
yeah,
Jeremy Renner,
yeah,
especially when he's like reliving the trauma. But it is very interesting having that type of character in here because it's like it's the idea of playing with the different cultures and like what it means to be someone who is still fighting for the same side but still feels like an outsider because you're not necessarily accepted in the community you're in, or you have trouble fitting in because this tragic event happened and you feel like you're almost to blame, because the people who are killing these indigenous girls are the white men. So it's like he's kind of conflicted because
right.
he's like, I'm a parent of a girl who is literally a victim of this, but like the person who's victimizing is also, white, these white guys on this
Right, right.
reservation. um yeah, so it's
And
very
it's like
interesting.
and it was like the cops, wasn't it?
Kind of, yeah, like that. I think so, or like they were like rangers or something. Yeah, I think something like that. It wasn't the indigenous cops; it was like all the white cops or whatever. But I don't know if they were cops or if they were workers of some sort on the reservation or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like a gang of them almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really hard to watch. And I agree. It's like this is one of those
Yeah.
movies where I have to like remove the is it a good movie from do I like it? Because do I like it? Do I like watching this? No, like I don't enjoy any of it. It's hard to watch, but like I think it's still a great movie because it's raw. It's got all these emotional moments and like it does still feel tasteful enough to where like you do see it and it's tough to watch, but it's not like overly like they show like a few seconds of it and that's it. Like it doesn't try too hard to like
Yeah.
kind of
But
make
like
you
it's
it's
enough.
enough. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think they could have not shown the rape itself and shown the lead up, shown like her lying on the bed and then
Cuz
cut there before you see him like doing it. Like that would have been better, I
yeah,
think.
because what's so tough about that scene, and honestly, like just having the a woman's perspective is just like that is like honest to God, like a like
Sorry, they're security guards. Like they're security guards on the reservation. That's who they are. They're
okay.
not cops, but
Gotcha.
yeah. So yeah,
Gotcha.
I just looked that up.
Yeah, because I knew that they had like some type of like badge and some
Right.
type of authority situation. Um
Exactly.
but like as just like as a woman, like that's something that I fear more than I fear death.
Right.
And because it's honestly a fate worse than death, because that's something that you have to then go on and live with for the
Right.
rest of your life.
Right.
And it's just so much to see it dramatized. And it's not like it's romanticized in any way or anything, but
No.
it's a lot to view. And I think all that really that scene needed was when they realized, okay, he's unconscious now and she's unconscious and she's draped over the bed, and they all just kind of turn and look at her. And you
And then
kind of
cut.
see the awful wheels all turning in their brains.
Mhm.
And then you could have just, because in that moment as an audience member, you go, oh fuck, like they're gonna do the
Right, you
awful
know what's gonna
thing.
happen, you don't need to see it. It's like almost like the opposite
Yeah.
of show don't tell. It's like we could just tell not show for this kind of case scenario because also
Yeah.
I think that scene is an interesting plot twist in that when that door opens, you think John Bernthal's character is the one who raped her because she comes into his trailer and you're like, oh fuck. But then you see they have a really sweet moment, and then you
Yeah.
see the other guys come in, and as soon as you see the other guys come in, that's when you know. Because you
Right.
know after because they're lying in bed, you're like, wait, no, this can't possibly be a rape. And then when the
Mhm.
guys come in, you're like, oh, okay, this is where it's going. I think you could have even
Yeah.
cut then, where the guys
Yeah.
come in, they hit John Bernthal over the head, and then boom, blackout, and then it's like, all right, we got it. And I think that's where a lot of people, when I've been reading, because I've been reading a lot of reviews on like Letterboxd and things, that's where a lot of people do turn off from this film because they're like, why did we need to see that? When as soon as those guys enter the trailer, you know what's going to go down. You know then that John Bernthal's not the rapist, that he actually tried to save her. You don't need to see it. And I agree with that. And
Yeah.
that's honestly why this time around watching it, I bumped it down a half a star from the last time I saw it because I was really put off by that. I still think the overall power of the story and the message really rings through, especially with the use of indigenous culture and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
like, I agree. Like, I think that scene does sour a lot of the taste for sure.
Just yeah, and it was that scene, and then it's also the moment where Elizabeth Olsen is questioning I don't remember his name, but Jacob Black's grandfather, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to go ask my wife about it? Like, go ahead. She's in the other room." And then she's in the room cutting
Cutting her,
herself.
yeah, yeah, because
And
she's
I'm
so
like
distraught. Yeah,
and I'm like, first of all, I would be like, maybe call someone, get this woman some help. Maybe she should be in an
right.
institution. I wouldn't just have watched that and been like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that this is
Right.
happening in your
I don't
house."
I assumed maybe it was like a cultural thing. Like they mark themselves when they're in
Ugh,
grief or something. I don't know though. I don't know if that's the case, but I
I
agree.
don't
It's like
know either.
it didn't seem as urgent when it
And
happened,
it
but it yeah.
yeah. And so my biggest problem with this movie deal is that I don't think that it was a bad movie necessarily, but it just has these really unsettling moments that, like you
Mhm.
said, kind of sour it for me. And like I don't walk away from this movie thinking about really the performances or the message of it. I walk away feeling icky because I was subjected to seeing like such really grotesque and harmful stuff.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and that's also I think the type of audience members we are too, because like you said, like you as a woman have to like live through that everyday fear, and it sucks. It sucks that anyone in any life has to go through that fear, but it's true. Like some men in this world are just awful, and I agree. And I think if I was maybe a parent, I'm wondering if when I'm a parent, if this movie hits even harder and makes it even harder to watch, because I think as a parent also you can watch this film and see that happen, because it's all about a father going through this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's one of those things where I am literally not a young woman, I am not a father, and I'm not an evil white person, at least I hope not. So like it's like I really don't have anyone to really relate to. I'm merely a spectator, but I also feel like
Right.
that's where I can kind of relate a little bit to Elizabeth Olsen's character, because she's kind of thrown into this environment. But the difference being with her is also she's a woman in this man's world, and I love the scene where they're all in the shootout and she's like, hell, FBI here, I'm gonna shut
Yeah.
this down right
Yeah.
now. And I like those moments, especially because like the whole movie, like even when the mother, grandmother or whatever, Jeremy Renner's mother-in-law is putting the like giving her the mittens and hat. She's like, this was my daughter's, and you find out it's Jeremy Renner's daughter's stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Olsen's wearing it, and there's like that kind of sadness of even like her not feeling accepted, because it's also another thing where like in that community they view the white people as the ones who are harmful, the ones who are doing the harm, the ones that are raping and killing their young girls, and
Mm-hmm.
it's heartbreaking to know that even the innocent ones are looked at negatively, because everyone kind of like the whole like bad egg has spoiled the bunch type thing, and that's
Right.
fair because they have, and I just think that's why I'm so drawn to this movie in a way, because I love what it has to say about cultures and like the way certain minorities are ignored, and they shouldn't be. I think this is a good cause of awareness, like a big alert, especially at the end when they say that like every just like sexual assault is like recorded in every like type of culture or every part of the world except for like these indigenous communities where it's not reported or whatever, and it's like, why
Mm-hmm.
not, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the stuff that sticks with me and why I leave this film feeling so like empowered, because I'm like, this should not be happening. We should not have these girls going missing and raped and killed so often, because it seems to be a recurring pattern. That's what I'm coming from. But also I understand, like, especially if as a parent or as a young woman or as an older woman, even like having to see all this unfold is tough. And I think it's a more interesting conversation starter than it is a film, because it's a well shot film. It's gorgeously shot. They use the atmosphere really well, the cold atmosphere. You get that sense of cold, but I think it stands
Yeah.
for more than just its filmmaking. It's more about the messaging, and sometimes that messaging, they cross the line to get there, and I don't think that's as tasteful. But I ultimately still came away from it having learned a lot, and like wanting to open my eyes more about witnessing and trying to be alert when it comes to circumstances like this, especially as someone who's entering into quarter life crisis mode of like wanting to start a family soon, and wanting to like have kids of my own, and having to just make sure I'm protecting them, and mindful of who they're spending time with and the people in the area that could be harmful. Like it brings a lot of questions to the forefront. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very big conversation starter, but I get why like it may be off-putting, and that's totally fair, because it is point blank. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just it was really tough. I will say though, as as far as Jeremy goes in
Yeah.
this movie, like, you kind of really walk away, I feel like, feeling more for, or I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a woman, but I was, you're rooting for Elizabeth Olsen the whole time, and you kind of
Right.
really want her to, like, because it almost feels like she's the underdog in this situation. Like, she's a woman in this man's world trying to, like, get shown like an ounce of respect, and no one is putting up with it. So, oh my god. Also, like, the moment she was shot, I was like, did they just fucking kill Elizabeth Olsen? Because I'm
Mm.
gonna be pissed.
The bulletproof vest.
But she was wearing the vest, so she was all good. Um, but yeah, Jeremy, I will say that this role feels the most similar to Clint out of the three of them.
I,
So, and to be fair, like, 2017, he's in like the throes of playing Clint in
right.
the midst of all this, like in the background. So I can understand like why, we had a lot of similarities in this role.
Mm.
But I will say, like, with Clint and with this character, like, and with um his character in the Hurt Locker, like he's kind of really good at playing a role that's so guarded and like solemn, and like you can tell there's like a lot of layers to this guy, without feeling like he's closing you out. You're
Mhm.
still drawn in by his performance, and you want to get to the bottom of, like, why his character is the way that he is. Like, he's just very good at like playing this very like stoic guy who's like, yeah, I've seen some shit. And if you really want to know about it, you're just going to have to wait until the climactic part of this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But, and so you're just like, I don't know. He's very good at captivating an audience in that regard. Um, and then I wrote, I feel Elizabeth Olsen's breakdown. I feel like in the hospital she might have had a moment where she
Mhm.
just like kind of released
Yeah.
everything, and I was like, yeah, I feel you. That's also how I would feel. Like, that's how I feel right now watching this movie. But like, if I was
Yeah.
a character in this movie, I feel like I would also just like have this moment to myself where, like, they decide, she's like, go get him, like, go find him and go get him. And he's like, well, I'm not going to bring him back. Like, he's not going to be arrested. Like, I'm going to kill this guy.
Yeah.
And they kind of just have this moment of understanding that's like, yeah, I know. Just go get him. And and then she just is able to just like have this release that, like, there's going to be this moment of justice for this young woman. And yeah, it's just a lot.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
a lot
lot.
to deal with.
This film, that's a good word for it. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, well shot, well made, but like it's a lot. Yeah. I gave it an 8.
Also,
I was, oh, so go ahead, go ahead.
no, sorry. I was just gonna, like, because I did give it like a score on the lower end, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's unfair because I had to watch this movie. I wanted to obviously watch it for free, so I watched it on like Pluto TV, this
A lot of
random
ads.
streaming service, and there's a lot of ads in it, and the site is like a mess. It's not a well-made
Yeah,
streaming
no. I
service.
watched it on Freevee on Amazon Prime. So there were still ads, but it was
Okay.
Prime, so it was at least a little
Okay, so it was
easier to
probably a little
manage, but
bit more
yeah.
like put together, where like this, like Pluto, I was, it like,
Pluto's a,
because like
yeah.
the movie would just like stop, like it would freeze, so I thought that I was like having a buffering issue, but then the ad would like start playing and then cut back to the movie, and then it would be like the ad again, and I was like, oh my god, this is a mess, this is really ruining my
The thing
movie
is, it
watching
never picks good
experience.
ad breaks with Pluto. The difference is, like,
Yes.
Freevee on Amazon Prime, it has good ad breaks, but, like,
Yeah, almost
Pluto,
as
it's
if
just
it was
random.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah,
And
Pluto,
I
don't
deal with that because
recommend.
that's where I used, before I had, Hulu and Peacock, that's where I used to watch, like, Hell's Kitchen. So, like, I
Oh,
would just put it on
okay.
with Dave and Lane, and we'd watch it, and like, it would just be in the middle of, like, a phrase. He'd be like, "Hey, hey, you, did you go" like,
Ad,
you know?
yeah, yeah. No, yeah.
So I get that. But also,
It's
don't feel, like, guilty about giving low scores to things that just make you feel icked, because it's like, even a movie as well made as or well shot as this can, like, it's all about how you respond to it. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what
Yeah.
criticism is. It's not saying, is this movie objectively good or objectively bad. It's, how did it make you feel? And I think that's what sometimes people lose track of when it comes to criticism. Is like, we're not judging a movie on, like, we're not judging it really on a rubric. We're judging it on our own personal rubrics, in sense of, like, how does it make you feel? Like, if a movie really relates to me, I'll give it a 10, even if it's not the most well made, and vice
Mhm.
versa. If it's really well made, but I just don't connect to it or don't feel any sort of feeling, then I'm not going to give it a high score. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. I did give this an 8 though. I had it a little higher going in, and then after watching it, I was like, yeah, like, that one moment just, like, really kind of sours a lot of it. But I still
Mhm.
think it really did emotionally affect me in a way that, I wouldn't say positive way, obviously, but, like, in a way that I feel empowered, in a, not even empowered, because it's a very, it's the opposite of that. It's not an empowering film, but you know what I mean. Like, I
Mhm.
was moved by it, and that's why I gave it an 8. But what'd you give it for your score?
I gave it a 5 out of 10.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so average. I mean, that's not bad. 5 is
So
good.
yeah,
But yeah, Her Locker is your
cuz it's
favorite.
yeah. Yeah,
Which one would
for
you, so
sure.
now we kind of, like, at the end of every Avengers Movie Club, we talk about which one would you recommend for people who maybe want to see a different side of Jeremy Renner, and then which one would you say would be, like, the one to watch if you like him as Hawkeye, or are they the same?
Uh, I think that if you want to see something vastly different from Clint, I would say The Town.
Yeah.
But if you just want to see like a really solid performance and a really, um, really just good movie, then I would recommend The Hurt Locker.
Yeah, The Town would be mine for both.
Okay, gotcha.
It's my favorite movie of the bunch, but also it's like I think it's the coolest performance of his outside of Clint, like because it's so different. But that's our Avengers Movie Club. A lot of good discussions there for those movies. Let us know in the comments what you think of these movies if you've seen them. If you haven't seen them, go watch them. At least go watch The Hurt Locker because that's the one we both liked. Um,
Mhm.
and Kelsey, next week we're doing some trivia. It's going to be our April trivia. It's going to air on May 1st, but we will have filmed in April, so it counts, people. Because then in
It
May
counts because we say it
we're getting
does, and it's
Stacy
our
and
show.
Noah. We're getting Stacy and Noah in May, but early May we're gonna have a rookie match, and then Chris and Brian are gonna go at it one more time, a little rematch of sorts, kind of settle the rivalry there.
Mm.
And where else can they find you though in the meantime, Kels?
You can find me on Instagram, Kelsey A. Kilpatrick, or you could follow me on TikTok, Cause13.
That's right. And you can find me at Dylan_Randazzo, TikTok, Twitter and or Letterboxd. Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok, Dill Pickle Movie Network. If you're listening, go check it out on video. If you're video, go listen to it because now it is on podcast and I'm gonna have weekly now. It's set to where now it will air weekly on podcast. I'm so sorry about that. We had like backlogged 10 episodes that just never made it to podcast because Anchor was bought by Spotify and I just never changed the setting once that happened because I didn't think I needed to. So now it's set. Now it's set and we will have episodes airing weekly. I'm so sorry. And thank you for Kelsey for pointing that out. Kelsey, do you want to plug your Letterboxd or are you still in the process of like shaping it?
It's not ready yet. I'll
Okay,
let
but
you
can
know
give
when
it to
it's
me
ready.
off air so I can look at it?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And you can follow me because it's so fun. Like give these 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, but like you can do that on Letterboxd, people. You can go like give it a rating. So like for example, I'm gonna do a little ad right now. Like The Town. You would like find The Town and you would go to your review or whatever. You'd give it the amount of stars. I gave it 4.5. That's 9 out of 10. And then you can add it, or you can start a diary and like actually log when you watch these movies. So like you can see exactly when you watched them all and all your scores for things and your reviews for certain things when you click on the movie. It's a great tool, and we're not ad sponsors for Letterboxd, but if Letterboxd wants to sponsor us, we will gladly give you ads because we love you and we use you all the time. Use you in a good way, not like like you used me. But thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week for some trivia. Bye.